flat and frosty this morning. We are at the job and the builder is not here yet. I do like it when I beat the builder to the job. I did say between 7:30, 7, and it's probably, I don't know, it's probably about 10 past or something. So yeah, we'll just sit here. I'll go through my comments from yesterday on the YouTube platform, and I'll enjoy my black coffee from the Cafe Tier in my cup that I found the other day in the back of the motor. Marco's from Barry Island, and yeah, I did go to Barry Island to get that cup. I tell you what, it's absolutely freezing this morning. It wasn't supposed to be this cold. I'm just glad we're working inside today and not with Jasper the Emperor doing some rendering in these crazy temperatures. The old English weather never ceases to surprise, does it? So we got a very simple task today. He's just gone off to go, the builder here, Mark, he's just gone off to go and pick up the labourers. We need to do something with this here, if we are to get this wall done. But yeah, basically it's the ceiling in here, and skim what we can in this bathroom. And you may notice that the board here is green, which indicates that that is moisture resistant plasterboard. It's been recently brought to my attention that you shouldn't really put multi-finish straight onto moisture resistant board. It doesn't like it, it can pop off. I have done it, but I didn't realise that was a thing. I have done it and it's always been okay, but from doing these videos, a couple of people have told me that yeah, they have had issues with multi-finish sticking to untreated green board, which makes sense because it's moisture resistant, okay, and plaster's wet, so it's resisting the plaster, yeah. On the bag they recommend that you use a bonding agent liquid called Thistle Bondit, but the stuff is so expensive, it's like £100 a tub or something. I don't quite understand. So what we can do is prime this up with SBR, is another way you can get around it, or possibly PVA. I've said to the builder here to get some Thistle Bondit. There is no SBR here, but I do have PVA, so I'm probably, unless he's got the Thistle Bondit here, gonna have to just treat this up with a little bit of PVA. Do a real light coat just to help this adhere to the green board. So that's probably what we're going to do. First of all, we've got to get some scrims up around all these joints and stuff, and well, we've got PVA the ceiling as well. So look, credit room's been moved around and stuff. Got a bit of messing around to do. Look, it's the old coving adhesive and stuff, so we're going to scrape this back, and as you can see, we're over an Artex. This pattern is called Broken Leather. I've been in here doing some other bits and pieces. This is quite secure, so I'm quite happy just to plaster over this Artex. Again, sealing it up with PVA, polyvinyl acetate, PVA adhesive. We've still got some stuff in here to do. I've got up pretty much as far as we can. I believe a wall's going to go in here with a door, and that's going to be an ensuite. See, that area that we had there was family bathroom, small bedroom, and another bedroom, an ensuite through here. Oh, they put the pipes in. We might be able to get that done today, actually, that one wall. Okay, and we still can't do this ceiling out here. They put this massive great big Velux in, which was quite awkward to plaster over the top of these stairs and stuff, but they still need to put a loft hatch in here because they can't access the loft anymore now that they put this in there. So this whole area of loft here cannot be accessed until they get another hatch, pretty much similar to that one that's going to go in this area here, so they can get up into the attic area. Right, let's get on with prepping up, get some scrims up, get some PVA over that green board, get some beads up, and hopefully by that time the builder will be back and we can decide what to do with those last bits of wall, whether he's going to plasterboard them up, or if the plumber still needs to get some pipes up there or something. We will find out in a jiffy. So I haven't mentioned this trowel for quite a while. It's a 20 by 5 carbon steel trowel by Marshalltown, and if you look down the blade, it is relatively straight. It's only the very ends that kick up, which is the reason why I love this trowel so much. I mean, it looks more curved than it is on the camera. You can see there, look, it's just the very ends that curl up if that plasterboard is straight. Some large trowels, the whole blade of the trowel curls right round like this. They're the ones I find aren't very good for multi-finish if you're going to be setting with them, and I believe those curved trowels are much more suited to doing a concrete floor or something. Now let's have a look at this. This is, I believe, an 18 by 4, so you can see it's quite a little bit thinner, got ½ inch either side. And the other thing to notice is this shank down here, the shaft, is exactly the same as the 20, but we've got much more. This is what I call this area here the tang of the trowel, okay, over the toe and the heel. Now this extra bit of metal over the end with the same shank, I find makes this trowel a lot easier to use than this one, even though it's shorter, because there's hardly any tang. So this makes this trowel really rigid indeed. Now you can see it's in a bit of a state. It's because when I bought it online. I always like to look at the trowels if I can possibly go in the shop. Now the blade is supposed to be quite straight on this one, but it's not, it's bent, and it's more of a troweling up trowel really. So being in the carbon steel, you can see it's rusted up where it doesn't really get much use, and it's you know, it needs a lot of maintenance, and really you're not going to be putting on with something like this. You're only going to be troweling up, so it does have a lot of chance of not being used, and so yeah, it will rust up and stuff. But this is actually a floor scraping trowel. So that is the difference between some trowels. And when you drop all the way down to a 13-inch trowel, the tang on the end is very similar to the 20, okay? When you get down to a 16-inch trowel, this changes, but the tang is probably about the same again, which makes it, again, a very rigid trowel. And where it's more narrow, it gives you the chance to open the trowel up even further and plane the plaster off when it's almost set. The trouble I have with the thinner trowels is when I do plane it off, quite often my knuckles hit the wall. So I do prefer the extra width on the 5s. Anyway, I just thought I'd go into one on that, but I've just got this one out because just starting to take off this coating adhesive, and you never quite know what they stuck the stuff up with, and in this case, being as stubborn as that, I'm going to say that's bonding compound. I might need to get a hammer and chisel onto that. It's really stuck up there hard. And one of the things that's noticeable about this particular property, I mean, it's quite a large house in quite an affluent area. You know, I don't want to knock it out. It's you know, it's kind of thrown up. All the interior walls. Well, I mean, this has been completely remodelled up here, and it's been an ongoing project for me. I keep going away and coming back when the builder wants me. But one thing I noticed about this property, some of the ceilings have been plastered already. Some of the outside walls have been lined. There's been all sorts going on in here. I'm not too sure how old it is. It's not particularly that old. But one thing I've noticed is, so the inside walls are all wooden framed. The outside walls, you can see here where they've chased in. We've got these concrete blocks, which is fine, but then they've dot and dabbed them, okay? And they've actually used 9.5mm thick plasterboard to dot and dab these walls. So I don't know if it was probably around that time, but for dot and dabbing on the walls, you can see it's breached a little bit there. Dot and dabbing on the walls, it's just a little bit too flimsy for my liking. I mean, I believe 9.5mm board was more for putting on ceilings, maybe, where people won't be touching it, but yeah, it's very, very, very flimsy. I think you should have 12.5mm on the walls, and the fixings should be at 400 centres. So if it's wood, you should have 400 wide joists. Every 400 there should be a fixing, and the same as the ceiling. I think if you go up to 15mm board, then you correct me if I'm wrong on this on the comments. If you go up to 15mm board, then I believe you can go up to 600 centres, so you can have more space. But yeah, this hasn't really been the most amazing. I don't think the Dot and Dabber was very good when he done this house, or the whole estate must be like it really. Okay, so fibre tape, as you can see, it's like a nylon or glass fibre gauze, and it goes over all the joints of the plasterboard. Like so. Corner needs a bead. Tin snips. I tend to come at a bit of an angle. No, it's just a little bit too long. Nip another little bit off. Hold on. I just guessed how much needed to come off the top of that bead, because I just know. And it looks like I was a depth of one floorboard out. So you get that down. It doesn't have to be perfect at the bottom, because the skirting is going to go over it. So look, there we go. And then I tend to staple them up. I tend to, if I can and the situation allows it, which it should do, going over this plasterboard, I tend to use the stapler. If it's got staples in it. Oh. Mm. 10mm staples. Right, let's have another go, shall we? Here we go. Now you can hammer drywalls in, clout nails, whatever. You can stick them up with scrim if you want. There's all sorts of different ways. You can get hook beads now, which suggests you don't need anything. They've got little hooks in them, and they tap onto the corner, and you don't need any fixings, but you still do really. That corner would have to be absolutely perfect for a hook bead to sit on there properly. I've had them come off before. Okay, just beading up this window here, ensuring, it's probably one of the most important things, is to get these corners matching up absolutely perfect. Because if you don't, and get them secure as well so they don't move. If you don't, you're going to have real trouble when it comes to plastering. Your trowel's going to catch, and it's going to cause a little ridge. It's going to go dunk dunk, judder across there, and it's going to cause you issues. Right, so we can see here we're going on to an original wall, and in some of these situations the staples have struggled to get through the whole thing. So I've got my hammer out anyway, because I used the hammer and chisel to get that coving adhesive off. Just see them home with the hammer. Or if you're feeling a little bit nonchalant, you can just bang it in with your heavy duty stapler. There's only some that have failed. Some went in lovely, look. And say, alternatively, you can always nail them, you can stick them, or you can screw them up. PVA, polyvinyl acetate. I keep this tub ready to rock and roll in my motor. It's got a lid, goes over the top, stops it spilling out. You add water to it to get it sort of like a single cream sort of consistency, and we need to get that over the ceiling. Okay, so the PVA has gone all over the ceiling, and we've got a tight coat on this green board as well. Now, well, that's pulling in quite nicely actually, which means there's probably quite a bit of suction on there. There's all sorts of bonding agents you can use. You can use SBR, Thistle Bondit, which is really expensive. I've never ever actually used that stuff. Or PVA, and I tend to go to PVA more often than not, unless I need the specific qualities of SBR, where I need things like all the suction to be killed off, really high moisture areas. I use it as an additive. I tend to only use SBR outside. You can't use PVA outside. So basically what you're supposed to do is put PVA over painted surface so it actually physically glues the plaster to the painted surface. If you've got a really porous surface, if it's bone dry, then you put PVA over it, and then that way you are killing the suction down, okay? Because you don't want the surface to draw too much moisture out the plaster too quickly, which is not going to happen with the painted surface, but it's not going to be able to stick because there's not enough suction there. So you kind of need to regulate it a little bit more on experience than anything else. So yeah, on all the information booklets and stuff like that, they say you should really go over PVA when it's tacky, okay? So and when it's gone really sticky, but you will be surprised, in my experience, how far you can let that PVA go. I mean, it can be virtually like touch dry, and when the plaster gets on it, you've got all the water in the plaster, it kind of reactivates the PVA and makes it sticky again. Okay, so let's have a quick look what's going on in here. I'll put PVA over these reveals, over this painted surface, and I'm assuming it used to be a bathroom. It's all been remodeled up here, but you can see this PVA here is still soaking wet and still far too wet to plaster over, whereas on the ceiling it's pulled in really nicely. So that's going to indicate that this is probably some sort of bathroom paint or something, so it's quite waterproof, quite sealed. So we need to get this chase up here filled up with some sort of undercoat. I had a look around the job. I knew there was some somewhere, but we've only got hardwall, which is fine, it will do the job, but hardwall tends to take quite a long time to go off. So what I'm going to do is try and accelerate that. Now I've got a little bit of water now. You can throw like a couple of handfuls of cement, or you can buy additive accelerator from companies like Storm Additives or Easy Mix, blah blah blah. But we haven't got any of that. We've got no cement, got nothing. So we need to accelerate this as best we can from scratch. And what I'm going to do, put a tiny little bit of water in there to start off with, and I'm going to put so much powder in it, it's going to be almost like a biscuit mix, okay? It's going to be really unworkable and dry, and that's going to accelerate the setting time when I add the amount of plaster powder to it again to create the amount that I need to fill this chase, which actually isn't very much at all. It's probably going to be, that's what I need. So there we go, look, that's what I've knocked it up like. It's really quite stiff in the bottom there. Look at that, it's ridiculously stiff. It's too stiff to work. Okay, now I'm just going to let that sit there for a little bit, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, whilst I get on with some other stuff. Then I'm going to add some more water to it, knock it back a little bit, and then use it to fill that chase. Now, like I say, doing this will really accelerate the setting time. So if you're knocking up a big bucket, if you've got your labourer, and you're knocking up a big bucket of multi-finish, do not do this to it, because it will speed up the setting time. So the alternative to hardwall is bonding, Thistle bonding coat, which generally is in the purple bags, and that's much more suited for this sort of stuff, renovation stuff. It goes off a lot quicker, and it's a lot coarser, a lot stickier. Hardwall is for medium to high suctions, and it's for going over big areas and floating walls out, which is a bit of a thing of the past. Not many people have walls floated out and have the thick walls. It's normally all dot and dab these days.
Yes? Yeah. 2 Red Bulls for him, 2 Cokes for you.
So the builder here, Mark, has turned up with one of these for all the boys. Sausage, egg and bacon with tomato sauce. That should give you something to do whilst I'm waiting for that to pick up. really shouldn't be eating this.
I'm done, mate. I ain't got fucking face.
I'm supposed to be on a diet.
If you were going to do that, you should have told them the first.
Okay. So it's taken me about 10 minutes to eat that massive great big roll. Coming back, I can feel it stiffened up a lot. So I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of water to this, loosen it back up, and then use it to fill that chase. So there we go, still quite stiff, but much more workable. Right, let's get it in there. You need to have a bit of confidence, you need to hold it, really throw it in there, make sure it grabs hold of the surface you're plastering onto. Make sure you get an adequate amount deeply pushed in. Through those springs up there as well. Let's repair some of this whilst we're at it. Okay, so that chase is all filled, good enough, and I repaired where some of that coping had been taken off and damaged that 9.5mm board that has been dot and dabbed up there, and I'm assuming this is all going to get closed in, but I had a little bit left over and repaired a little bit under there rather than just chuck it in the skip. So next thing to do now, I've got a little bit of dirty water left from mixing up that hard water, that hard wool, so I'm probably going to keep that and I'm going to knock up a bucket of multi-finish and we'll get the ceiling on, and well, probably these walls as well. It's such a small hit. It's all going to be tiled in there eventually, but you know, this is just what the builder's asking for, and he buys me cakes and, well, I shouldn't eat them all really. As you saw, bacon sandwiches and stuff, so I'm not going to argue with him. So ideally I need some plasterboard on here so that I can get some scrims up, but if it's all being tiled, we can always scrim up afterwards, and the tile adhesive is going to go over it anyway. Okay, so we've got the ceiling on and flattened out, and I had a look in the bucket and I thought, where should I go with what's left in the bucket? Because I didn't really think about it, I just knocked some up. And I thought, oh, do you know what, it's probably just enough to get that wall on with those reveals, and there was. And it was kind of like a bit of a happy accident, because if you remember, this had that kind of like waterproof paint on it, so there's really low suction, so probably a good idea to get this little bit of wall on here sooner rather than later. Yes, I know I've already said to him he should really have the scrims on and stuff like this, but this is all being tiled. The builder knows what he's doing. He's just pointed and told me to do it, and I said okay. Bought me a bacon sandwich. I'm just a private plasterer, a plasterer for money. I'll do what you want me to do. I'm just a private plasterer. Plasterer for money, and any old wall will do. That's what I say anyway. So with that on, okay, another thing probably to notice is, yes, there's lots of different ways you could tackle an Artex ceiling. You could put a couple of handfuls of bonding or hardwall in the first mix, or just float it out with an undercoat, let that go off, and then give it your two-coat system. But remember, I'm always using this 20-inch carbon steel trowel, and I'm quite used to it. So if you are going to go over something like this with just multi-finish, you will notice at this stage, when it's all still very wet, you've still got a lot of bleed through from the pattern underneath. So the real trick to getting over this is to let that first coat pick up quite a bit so it starts holding itself together. Maybe give it one flatten as usual, and then around the laying down time give it another quick flatten to take out. Here we go, look, we've got some pimples and stuff as the light is catching it. So yeah, let that first coat off a little bit harder, a little bit further, so it starts holding itself together, because if you put more weight on it whilst it's really wet, then the pattern's just going to bleed through again. So we need this first coat, hold itself together, let it pick up, give it a couple of flattens so it prolongs your window of opportunity to get back onto it, and then lay it down with a nice tight coat. And if you've left it long enough, you shouldn't get any of that pattern bleeding through into the laid down coat. So we've got the ceiling laid down, we've got this wall laid down, and I've got enough to get the first coat on here, and around the corner, and I had a little bit left over in the bucket, so I've just gone over the joints on that one. When I knock up to lay down for these, I'll probably just get a coat on there and one coat that, because I'm pretty sure this is where the shower's going to go. So that wall, I'm going to assume, is going to be completely tiled. So yeah, he just wants me to plaster it anyway. You've done it, yeah? You've bought it out in there. Gonna have to try and save this wall. Okay. I think I might need to get a few more screws in there, some scrims. This wall is going to be completely tiled. I've still got this last wall to get on in here as well. Otherwise everything else in here is complete, apart from cutting out the lights. Look, they still look like they're quite messy. But other than that, we're looking pretty good in here at the moment. I'm thinking of Frankenstein. Time's getting on, so it's going to be dirty water. I gotta admit, I did get quite a few comments about how thick I mix my multi-finish, and I do. I'm mixing it stiffer and stiffer these days. I just find it just makes for a stronger wall. It's easier to control, less shrinkage. Yeah, I just find it a lot better. So needless to say, this is not an ideal situation at all, but it is going to be completely tiled. So I am going to push quite a bit of plaster through this gauze. I'm not going to just rest it on top there. I'm going to put it through so it kind of behaves in the same way as plaster and lath. So you're going to have a nice depth of plaster there behind there, making that much more rigid. Again. Through, see? Can't do it and hold the camera at the same time. Yeah, that is multi-finish. I'm not putting up that stiff. With dirty water in it. That's a 20-inch trowel. Oh, lovely. So that wall there is one coat, sponge coat. If there's anything wrong with that, I would be a monkey's uncle, especially if it's just going to be tiled. Now the real trick to setting yourself up to be able to get away with doing a sponge float, which is one coat, is knocking the plaster up really quite thick in the first place and putting it on quite thick so it can take, it's got the depth, you're not going to reveal any of the scrims when you start digging into it with the sponge float. And ideally, so you put it on, you'll flatten it on, and at the point where you might lay it down, give it another flatten, then you don't need to leave it long after that, then you sponge it up, and you just sponge up the surface, don't keep going over it, digging into the depth of it, you just want to liven up that surface. Give it 5-10 minutes for that sort of, that livened up gear to stiffen back up again, and then in this case, I mean quite often I'll go straight back over it with the 20x5, in this case because it's being tiled, and it's over board work, which is quite flat anyway, and straight over it with a flexi. It's perfectly good. I mean, look at it. So there we go, look, same thing. If you remember, this was that Frankenstein wall that had been stitched together. You see, as it's setting, that's the line where they'd cracked it, and it cracked down this way, so as it's setting, we're getting a bit of discoloration through there. But as you can see, even with the state of this, one coat sponge, and remember this area here, that's just scrim with the plaster pushed through. There was a massive great big hole on that. The same as up here. It's all solided up, making sure you get enough through there. So there you go. If you are kind of like a beginner sort of plasterer, intermediate, and you're not too sure about your timings with the sponge float, then what a perfect example, what a perfect place to practice where a wall is going to be eventually tiled, and they just want you to plaster it because it just makes the tiler's life a little bit easier, and it gives maybe a little bit more extra protection for, you know, the water getting through the ground should it do that sort of stuff. So there you go. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, so the strategy was obviously to hit all that room, all the good walls that needed to be done, and that was probably at the limit that I could do it, and then so I left these two flat easy walls which I knew were going to be tiled so that I could get away with knocking it up really thick with dirty water, sponge float it to death, trowel it up with a flexi, and I mean it went on after 2 o'clock. I'm not sure, I should have timed it better. Went on after 2 o'clock, it's just about 4 o'clock now, maybe just gone, it's done. And I can get packed up and I can go home and edit videos. So yeah, not in every single situation can you get away with sponge float. And doing these videos, especially on Facebook and places like that, not so much so on YouTube now, but yeah, all the plasters jump up and they want to knock you for using the sponge float. It's a cheat, it is a cheat, but in some situations you can get away with it. But I'll tell you, for something like that, it's the closest thing you're going to get to a magic wand where you can just point the wand at the wall and say, is he busy? Let's get busy. Bing, and it's done, okay? Yeah, if you've got a little ceiling or something, a little patch job at the weekend or something like that, it can shave like loads of time off your set. So it is worth using it or getting the hang of when you can and when you can't use it. I've noticed a couple of plasterers I've been working with recently, like Jasper the Emperor and stuff, they've been starting to sponge coat sponge float 2 sets, 2 coat sponge floats, in a way to be able to handle much bigger gauges, because I want to get, so even if you're like speeding up the gauge, you can only get so much on if you're going to 1 coat sponge coat, because you've got to get back on it quicker. If you're 2 coating, you can get a little bit more on because you've got a bigger window of opportunity because you're 2 coating. And if you 2 coat sponge float, then you can actually push on that a little bit harder, especially if there's a couple of you. Because when it comes to sponge floating, you've got one guy going off about 5-10 minutes in front of you, and then you're coming behind him, and you can get on some huge gauges. Me and Shay, it's the first video we did. Shay was an improver, a labourer, he didn't even put on. We did 105 metre ceiling, it was a sports hall. On a hot day, just me and the lad, and yeah, we did it in 8 hours, 11 bags, 105 metres, and we used the sponge float to pull it back and trowel it up, and they loved it. The painter said that it was perfect, there was no fill-in or anything like that, and it was a sports hall, so it was one of those things where you could possibly get away with it. Again, nobody's going to be sitting there watching TV and then looking up, well, that's a bit of a ripple in that ceiling. Not that there was, but you know, it's one of those places you can get away with it. It's a public building, you know. So yeah, sponge floats, do have a little play with them when you get the opportunity. Don't knock them. They are a handy tool to have in your kit. And whilst we are here talking about sponge floats, actually, I thought they were quite a new thing, but I know they've been around for a little while, but I was working with an old fella a few years ago, and he told me, because I said, oh, you seen these sponge floats now? He goes, yeah, well, we used to like nail old carpet to wooden floats to create the same effect. And I was like, really? So I was amazed. You know, this is not a new idea, it's been going on for a while. And somebody did comment on one of the videos where I've been going on about sponge floats as well, because of the type that I use the more dense ones with a thinner sponge, not the really coarse ones that you always have to wash out, because if you try to use a dirty one, all the little lumps of plaster come out and get all over your ceiling. So I use the dense ones, and I tend not to wash them out so much, and over a period of time you get a skin over the top and the lumps don't come out, and I get two of them and rub them together. And that's all I have to do to wash them, because it can be a pain washing out sponge floats and making sure you get them clean, and it wears them out quite a lot as well, even just the washing of them. So by leaving with the dirty, where is it? I think I'll put it away, I should show it. But I just did a short of it recently, so have a look at that on the playlist. So leaving them a little bit dirty gives them a little bit more protection, because you've got a layer of plaster there, but they've still got the sponginess to them. So yeah, one of the older guys who's a regular commenting on videos said it reminded him of pretty much the cross-grain wooden floats. I've never knew that was a thing, cross-grain wooden floats, but he said that's what they used to use, and it just reminded him, and said it was remarkably similar, that I'd created a cross-grain wooden float for multi-finish. I believe they would have used it for the Sarafite. It was a different finish back then, but yeah, it's not a new thing. It's quite an old thing. It's kind of like people revived it a little bit. One last thing to add about sponge floats is they do get a bad rep, because you've got the meter eaters on site, on doing council flats or whatever, and they're knocking up their plaster so thin so that they can get it on, get meters on, and they're flying over it, and what they do, they're kind of like tape and joint it first, and then put a one coat over the top, and then they'll sponge the life out of it, and it's going so thin, and they've knocked up the plaster thin in the first place that it can't handle it, and then that's when you start getting scrims grinning through and stuff like that, and you start losing your quality if you start trying to, you know, push your luck too far. And if you're getting paid by the meter, I mean, you know, it depends how much you're getting paid for the meter, but you know, sometimes you're really pushed. So I do understand why they do it, but that's why it gets a bad rep. One coat sponge floating. We don't have to try it. Don't believe me. Carry on doing your two coats on everything if you want, but yeah, with a little bit of practice, you can get a one coat sponge float up and leave a perfectly good, acceptable quality in somebody's house. As long as you've got time to play with it. You can't put a massive set on it. You need to be, you know, if it's just a couple of walls and you think, I can easily do that, then the sponge float is a viable option. If you want to put on meters and meters and meters and still leave a good quality, then you're probably better off sticking with the two coat system, and then maybe if you need to introduce a sponge float to that situation if you want to push it a little bit further. But yeah, please do have a practice. When you got a wall like that that's going to be tiled, that's the place to practice, and in cupboards. Alright guys, well done for making it to the end of that video. Turned out to be quite long, didn't it? I guess that's what happens when I'm left to my own devices and just working completely by myself. Yeah, just having you guys as my friends, my imaginary friends. If you did enjoy this video, I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was alright. Then please do like and subscribe. Don't forget there's a Facebook page, a group which is called Plaster Master Smurf 74 as well, the same as the channel. If you want a little bit more interaction from me and other plasterers, then do come over there as well. Next week I am off to Oxford and working away for the week because it's quite a long travel. So as far as videos are concerned, I'm not sure what I'm going to get up. So yeah, it's just one of those, isn't it? Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Like I say, if you did like the video, do subscribe, do give it a like, all that stuff, and I will see you on the next video, which should not be too long at all. Alright guys, take it easy.